Okay, very good evening to everyone. I hope you and your family are safe and doing well in this unprecedented time. I am Amit Goel, President for Delhi Regional Chapter of RATA. I would like to thank you all for taking out your time and joining us for this important event, yet another wonderful program today. Before we begin the program, I would like to start by giving a small brief introduction about RATA, which stands for Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Trades Association. This RATA was established in the year 1949 and is one of the oldest associations working for the development of air conditioning and refrigeration industry in India. Our association unites people from the entire industry and offer its members a common platform to learn, grow, and make progress, thereby also helping the industry to expand and flourish. As our active members, RATA covers over 500 plus MSME members, MSMEs companies across India, and is a huge testimony to the impact that we have made in the HVACR and trade industry. The diverse membership of the association brings together different aspects of trade. RATA believes in providing a central forum to its members to showcase their offerings, which in turn assist in promoting internal as well as external trade. With continuously evolving and changing market trends, the association promotes and facilitates with the overall development of its member and the industry by not only organizing educative and informative programs, but also developing working relations across India with prestigious organizations like Indian Merchant Chambers, ASSOCHAM, Federation of Associations, and so on. Besides an association, RATA also assists its members in resolving their issues in addition to addressing and fighting for some of the common concerns that persist in the industry. To enlighten you with an example, RATA is currently activating a national-wide plan to push GST reduction from 28 to 18% with active engagement from both the central as well as the state governments. Moving forward with the program today's event, we will talk about an extremely crucial subject over the years that has gained significance from all right reasons. The program today will cover the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, which is also known as POSH Act. The Act has been implemented as a mandated compliance by the government in order to ensure protection and provide a safe and a secure environment to every woman in the workplace. While various organizations have implemented the Act in a varying degrees of letters and spirit, the lack of awareness amongst the organizations, employees, policy upholders, and stakeholders within and outside the organization implies significant weak links and shortcomings across the policy implementation. This makes it imperative for us as a part of the system to understand and implement this act in its true spirit and create a healthy workspace for men and women alike. To give more insight on the same, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Ms. Sonika Aaron. Ms. Aaron is the founder and managing partner of Marching Sheep, an HR advisory council firm. A postgraduate alumni of prestigious XLRI Jamshedpur, Ms. Aaron is a certified coach who is passionate about HR, women empowerment, and strategically driving a change in the society as well as the mindset of the individuals and organizations. She frequently speaks at forums like FICCI, Transformance, USB conferences. As a thought leader in progressive HR practices, her opinions, her views, and works are well appreciated and published on platforms like Times of India, Hindu, Hindustan Times, Business World, etc. With over 18 years of experience in leadership roles at firms like Philips, Vodafone, and Pepsi, amongst others, Ms. Aaron has made her mark in the industry and has generated remarkable achievements. She has been listed as among the top 10 women entrepreneurs by Forbes India, among the top visionary business leaders by Entrepreneur World, and among the top 100 digital influencers by Your Story. I would like to extend greetings and welcome Ms. Sonika Aaron. We are extremely glad to have you with us today, and we would love to hear more about POSH Act from you. Over to you, Sonika. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Amit, and good evening, everyone. And it is my absolute pleasure to be here talking about a very important topic for everyone today. So let's have the slides now. So today we are going to talk about the Act. But before that, let me introduce our firm to you, Marching Sheep, which is we started in the year 2013. It is now about 8 years old. It is considered amongst the top 10 HR firms in Delhi NCR, in the country as well, by Business Connect and by Silicon India. Uh, it's very heartening to see that a lot of work that has been done by us in the area of diversity and inclusion, in the area of helping MSMEs set up HR processes, policies, structures in the past few years has been recognized across all platforms. What we essentially do is we help organizations become more productive and profitable systemically. We do not do anything topically. We help them understand what is it that they need in terms of the right structure, the organization structure, the right culture, and we customize solutions keeping in mind their industry, the kind of people that they have, the kind of products, the kind of customers that they have. We implement policies and practices, we train them, we change the mindset, and thereby we drive productivity in their organizations. Now we come to the topic of today. Why is sexual harassment at the workplace a critical issue? So, first and foremost, we need to understand that it is not just a women issue, it is a business issue. End of the day, every person who works in the organization needs to feel respected and valued. Everybody needs to feel safe, irrespective of their gender. Now, each one of us, all of you who is running a business, all of you would have daughters, sisters, you would have people who would eventually take over from you, who would be a part of your family, who would be studying to build careers. Now think about it, if they do not feel safe when they go to work, then what kind of a work culture are we leaving for them? And hence, sexual harassment at the workplace is an extremely critical issue. It's not just a women issue, it is a societal issue. It is a business issue as well. Why is it a business issue? Because it has been established after a lot of research that organizations, irrespective of their size, organizations that are diverse, where different genders are able to give their inputs, where they are able to thrive, are more productive and profitable. They are more innovative. They are more agile. They are able to meet the needs of the evolving customers. Now, let us look at some statistics. Okay. Despite the fact that everybody is aware that sexual harassment in the workplace is not good, even then, it has been proven that 1 in 4 women in the workplace get sexually harassed. 1 in 3 women within the age group of 18 to 34 has been sexually harassed. 81% women have faced harassment verbally. And we'll come to what it means when I say verbally, physically, through, virtually. What are all these different kinds of harassment? And it's not just women, even men. 1 in 10 men have faced sexual harassment. 25% of men are concerned that they will be accused of falsely accused of sexual harassment at the workplace. The top industries where sexual harassment is prevalent are owned businesses, trade, banking, and finance. Now let's look at global numbers, where it has been taken very, very seriously or not taken seriously. It is very sad to note that 68 countries still do not have laws to address sexual harassment at the workplace. There are many countries like India where it has only the act, POSH Act, only talks about sexual harassment of women. So the act, Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, is only talking about harassment of women. But there are many countries where the act actually covers harassment of both men and women. Let's move on. Let's look at how the act has evolved. Let's have everything on the slide, Nandita. Initially, it was just the Indian Penal Code. And it actually said that any assault to the outrage of a woman's modesty was considered a criminal offense. And how interesting it was, because the definition of a woman's modesty, the interpretation of a woman's modesty was left open. So depending upon who the person was, so Inspector A versus Inspector B could define a woman's modesty differently. There was no set definition or set guidelines or set prescription, nothing. And from 1860 till 1997, there was nothing else. Just these two sections, section 354 and 509, where, from eve teasing to rape to anything, you had to just file an FIR and you had to hope that, you were heard, and you were hopeful that, things could happen, justice could prevail. And then there was a ghastly incident which happened in around 1995-96. I don't know how many of you are aware of the Bhavri Devi case. She was a social worker, and she was trying to stop child marriage in Rajasthan. And when she was trying to stop that, 8 members from the community, 8 men from the community, gang raped her and made the husband watch. This case caught the attention of the entire nation, and that was when the government was forced to take action, and Vishakha guidelines came into being. Vishakha guidelines was for the first time an acknowledgement of the fact that sexual harassment or attack on women who work is a serious issue. However, it is very, very sad to note that Vishakha guidelines, even though they existed, never made any dent on anything. I joined my career in the year 2001, and I worked with the best organizations. I do not want to name them. I think they were there in my introduction. But I worked for a good 12 years. And never once in any organization, I even heard a hint of the word Vishakha guidelines. There was no awareness. It is not that I did not see or experience myself any kind of sexual harassment. Of course, I did. I saw women getting harassed. I saw a lot of instances of verbal, emotional sexual harassment. But there was no awareness of Vishakha guidelines by HR or by the top leadership. Vishakha guidelines existed, but they existed only in name. Nobody took them seriously. There was no effort by any organization whatsoever to make them, to implement them. And then Nirbhaya happened. and Nirbhaya shook the entire nation. It is very sad to know that it has to take Bhavri Devis and Nirbhayas to happen for things to change. But Nirbhaya happened, and that was when a lot of people were up in arms and saying that how many daughters will have to be sacrificed. And that is when the POSH Act and the committee and everything went into an overdrive. And the POSH Act finally got implemented in December 2013. And this time, the government meant business. This time, it was a law, it was mandated. And over the last 8 years, I have seen, because I started marching sheep in February 2018, and I saw the implementation of the act. And I have seen in varying degrees organizations first resist, then implement in letter, implement in spirit, how the evolution of the act has been. And today I'm going to take you through what is it that the organizations need to do to really implement the act in both letter and spirit, to really make a difference, to make a workplace truly safe for everyone, not just women, men as well. Let's move on. So what does the act really say? What if you really want to understand the act, what is the act really about? The act really wants prevention of sexual harassment. So first of all, it explains what is sexual harassment. What is the difference between harassment, which could be any kind of harassment? It could be bullying, it could be using abusive language, it could be not being a good manager. And sexual harassment is any kind of harassment with sexual undertones. So you have to differentiate between the two. So first of all, the act wants prevention. That's number one. The second is it wants protection. If, God forbid, somebody has been harassed, then that person needs to be protected. You need to protect that person from any kind of further bullying or isolation or any kind of further, saying that, okay, now you take the complaint back, or any kind of such cornering. The third is prohibition, making people aware that what is inappropriate behavior, and prohibition of inappropriate behavior. And lastly, redressal. Redressal, if an instance has happened, then ensuring that justice is served. So these are the 4 purposes of this act. And it wants all organizations to implement this in full spirit. It is not an act which says that it is men versus women. It is not that at all. It is an act which says that please understand what is sexual harassment and stop it. Understand what is inappropriate behavior and stop it. Prevent it. And if, God forbid, if something happens, please ensure that the lady is protected and redressal justice happens. That's all. So that every woman and every man can work in completely safe environment. That is the intent of this act. Let's move on. So what is sexual harassment? So to put it very, very simply, any act with sexual undertones which is unwelcome by the lady is sexual harassment. It can be physical. So, for example, some people have a habit of putting a hand on the shoulder. Now, if the other person is uncomfortable about it, then it can be sexual harassment. Here, the act is very clear. Impact versus intent. Some people try to say, I did not have the intent. मेरा intent नहीं था. उसको लगा लेकिन मेरा इंटेंट नहीं था. अरे आपका इंटेंट नहीं था, आप आपका सीना फाड़ के थोड़ी देख सकते हैं कि आपका इंटेंट था कि नहीं. लेडी को बुरा लगा, उस पे क्या इम्पैक्ट था, एक्ट उसको मानेगा. सो आपका इंटेंट था कि नहीं था वो आप अपने पास रखिए. लेडी को क्या लगा, उसको क्या फील हुआ, उसने आपको बोला कि आप बार बार मेरे कंधे पे हाथ मत रखिए, लेकिन आप नहीं माने. तो आपका इंटेंट था कि नहीं उससे हमें कोई मतलब नहीं है. उसके लेडी के ऊपर क्या इम्पैक्ट हुआ, उस आपने बार बार उसके कंधे पे हाथ रखा, उसके ऊपर क्या इम्पैक्ट हुआ, वो एक्ट मानेगा. So any kind of physical contact or advances which are not welcome by the lady is sexual harassment. Any demand or request for sexual favors, come for lunch with me, come for dinner with me, और बार बार उसको इस तरह से harass करना. मेरी ये है, मैं उसको बार बार गाड़ी में बैठा के अपने साथ मीटिंग्स के लिए ले जाता हूं. उसको नहीं अच्छा लगता फिर भी लेकर जाता हूं. इट कैन बी सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट. मेकिंग सेक्सुअली कलर्ड मार्क्स. हम लोग जोक्स बहुत सुनाते हैं, कभी कभी वो नॉनवेज जोक्स होते हैं. मीटिंग्स में लेडीज भी बैठी होती हैं, मेन भी बैठे होते हैं और नॉनवेज जोक सुनाए जा रहे हैं. कभी कभी नहीं अच्छा लगता लेडीज को. जरूरी है लेडीज के सामने नॉनवेज जोक सुनाना. शोइंग पोर्नोग्राफी. आजकल बहुत सारे व्हाट्सएप पे और टेलीग्राम पे जिफ्स भी आते हैं और जोक्स भी आते हैं जिसके अंदर ऐसा कंटेंट होता है जो कि अश्लील होता है. अब वो सर्कुलेट करना व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप्स में या किसी लेडी को दिखाना, that is sexual harassment. Any other unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. So इसमें ये समझना, अगर आप ये देखें, physical, any kind of demand, any kind of comment, showing pornography, anything which is unwelcome, anything which has sexual undertones. किसी को फीडबैक देना, किसी को बोलना कि आप काम ठीक से नहीं कर रहे हैं, किसी के साथ रूम में मीटिंग करना जिसमें सेक्सुअल अंडरटोन्स नहीं है, दैट इज नॉट सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट. इन सब चीजों से डरने की बात नहीं है. जब शुरू में पॉश आया था तो बहुत सारे लोगों ने हल्ला किया कि अब हम लड़कियों को हायर नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि अब हम उनको फीडबैक देंगे तो वो हम पे सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट की कंप्लेंट डाल देंगी. क्यों डाल देंगी भाई? लॉ ने सीधा सीधा लिखा है कि व्हाट इज सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट, व्हाट इज नॉट सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट. तो पॉश को एक बहाना मत बनाइए नॉट टू हायर विमेन. Sexual harassment is any kind of harassment which has sexual undertones. Any other kind of harassment which is bullying, use of abusive language, etc. is not sexual harassment. If you are giving tough feedback to an employee because of underperformance, because of poor attitude, that person cannot put a case of sexual harassment on you. Let's move on. I think we have already discussed this. Let's move on. नाउ अगर आप देखें तो सेक्सुअल हैरासमेंट दो टाइप में डिवाइड हो जाता है, क्विड प्रो क्वो एंड हॉस्टाइल वर्क एनवायरनमेंट. Quid pro quo is where you ask somebody for a sexual favor in demand for or in exchange for some benefit that you can give to the lady. So I can give you an increment, or I can give you a promotion, or I can give you some benefits if you get into a relationship with me, or if you give me some sexual favors. That is called quid pro quo. Using your position of power or your authority. I am your manager. I can give you better increment, better growth, better XYZ if you get into a relationship with me. That's one. The second one is creating a hostile work environment. Acha, you did not agree to my advances. Now you see what I do to you. हर मीटिंग में लेडी को ह्यूमिलिएट करना, उसको उल्टे सीधे चीजें बोलना, उसको सबके सामने बोलना कि you cannot do this, you cannot do that, making her feel bad in every situation, or leaving her out of meetings, not giving her good feedback, creating a hostile work environment because she refused your advances, or a manager's advances were refused. That is why creating a hostile work environment. So these are the two categories in which sexual harassment lies. Let's move on. Now, what are the different categories under the POSH Act? One is the workplace. Now, the government was very clear. They said it is not just the office or the office premises. If the employee is also going to the customer's office, or is going to a hotel for training, or is traveling in a metro for work, all of these places come under extended workplace. Because all of these things the employee is doing for work. And if in all these places the employee is harassed, then the employer is legally obligated to take care of the employee under the POSH Act. So the workplace is no longer just your office or your branch offices. It is also your supplier's office. So if anything, any untoward incident happens at the supplier's office, or any untoward incident happens at the vendor's office, any untoward incident happens at the customer's office, all of these places are extended workplaces. Employee. Who is an employee? Not just your permanent employees, your contractual employees, trainees, apprentices, housekeeping staff, your guards, security guards, everybody is an employee. Even people who are visiting, a consultant or a visitor is an employee. So for instance, you have a person from your vendor who has visited somebody in your office. He has come and misbehaved with one of your female employees. Your female employee can make a complaint again under the POSH Act, and you as an employer is obligated to deal with that complaint under the POSH Act. Who is the employer? The highest authority in the organization is the employer. So in your corporate office, who is the highest authority? In the branch office, who is the highest authority? That is the employer. Who is the aggrieved woman? Any woman who is associated with your organization in any way can be an aggrieved woman. Need not be just a permanent employee. As I said, it can be somebody from the housekeeping staff, it can be a vendor, it can be a supplier, it can be somebody from the procurement side, it can be a visitor, it can be a consultant, a trainer, a trainee, an apprentice, a contract labor. It can be anybody, any woman who feels she has been sexually harassed can complain under the POSH Act. A respondent is a person against whom the POSH complaint has been raised. It's anybody, it can be anybody. Let's move on. Now, the redressal. Now, for the redressal, this is one of the most important things and one of the most important duties of any organizations. First of all, if you have more than 10 employees, every organization should have an ICC, which is a internal complaints committee. Now, sometimes I get a question that all my 10 employees are men. I don't have any women. Doesn't matter. अगर आपके पास 10 employees हैं, अगर उनमें से कोई भी women नहीं है, तो भी आपको ICC बनानी है। और आपकी जितनी branches हैं, हर branch जिसमें 10 से ज्यादा लोग हैं, उसमें ICC होनी चाहिए। ICC एक परमानेंट बॉडी है, हमेशा होनी चाहिए। एक बार आपके ऑफिस में ICC बन गई तो आप उसको डिसमेंटल नहीं कर सकते। आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि अब मेरे ऑफिस में 10 लोग नहीं है, 9 हो गए, तो अब मैंने ICC डिसमेंटल कर दी। इट इज अ परमानेंट बॉडी, लेकिन हर 3 साल के बाद उसके मेंबर्स चेंज होने चाहिए। An ICC has the same powers as a civil court, and it has certain duties. The duties include, number 1, the ICC has to meet every 3 months. Number 2, in case there is any incident, they have to do a thorough investigation, जिसके बारे में हम अभी आगे बात करेंगे. Number 3, they have to give an annual report to the employer and to the district magistrate. Number 4, they have to do awareness sessions for the employees of the organization at regular intervals. ये ICC की ड्यूटीज हैं जो एम्प्लॉयर को इंश्योर करनी है, यानी कि यू आर ऑल बिजनेस ओनर्स, आपको ये इंश्योर करना है थ्रू ICC कि ये सारी चीजें हो रही हैं। फिर हम देखते हैं कि ICC का कॉम्पोजिशन क्या होना चाहिए। ICC में कम से कम 4 मेंबर्स होने चाहिए। इन 4 मेंबर्स में 50% शुड बी विमेन, यानी कि कम से कम 2 विमेन होनी चाहिए। उनमें जो प्रिसाइडिंग, 1 person is called the presiding officer. That person should be a senior woman of the organization, and 1 external member, जो कि आप किसी NGO से ले सकते हैं या कोई लॉयर ले सकते हैं, जिसको आइडिया हो कि पॉश को किस तरह इन्वेस्टिगेशन कैसे करना है, और कैसे इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करना है. Now let's look at the timelines of the investigation. तो सबसे पहले अगर कोई इंसिडेंट होता है तो हम कहते हैं कि अगर जितनी जल्दी हो सके तो विक्टिम को जितनी जल्दी हो सके कंप्लेंट राइटिंग में देनी होती है. लेकिन कभी कभी क्या होता है कि विक्टिम इज नॉट एबल टू गिव द कंप्लेंट बिकॉज ऑफ द मेंटल ट्रॉमा or sometimes because of the physical trauma. So the law has given them a time of 3 months. And in extenuating cases, this 3 months can be extended to 6 months. So first they make a complaint in writing and they have to make this complaint in 7 copies. Why 7 copies? 4 copies each for the 4 members of the ICC, 1 copy for the respondent, तो 5 हो गई. 1 copy is signed by the ICC members and given back to the victim for records, and 1 copy is kept by HR. That is why 7 copies. Then a copy is sent to the respondent saying that this is a complaint which has been made against you. Now you tell us. The respondent then has to reply within 10 working days. Then there has to be an inquiry, just like a domestic inquiry happens in a Factories Act. So a complete inquiry with witnesses, where both the victim and the respondent are interviewed, the witnesses are interviewed, complete interview is done and a report is made. Then an inquiry report is made in 10 working days, and then the recommendations are made to the employer. Now, what are the recommendations? Now, if the accused is found guilty, that yes, he has done sexual harassment, then depending on the severity of the misdemeanor, the ICC will define the punishment. The punishment can range from a verbal warning to a written warning to a fine to stopping of increment to even termination of the job, right? Now, depending on what is the recommendation, the employer is bound by law to act on the recommendations. Employer नहीं कह सकता कि अच्छा ये ICC की recommendations है, मैं तो नहीं करता, मेरा तो ये employer बहुत अच्छा business लाता है, he is very good in sales, so what, इसने sexual harassment किया, but I will not follow what the ICC is saying. Employer cannot say that. Once the recommendations of the ICC have come, the employer has to follow them and get them done. So the law has given the employer 60 days to implement the recommendations of the ICC. If either the victim or the accused or the respondent are not happy with the recommendations of the ICC, they can once again appeal to the ICC within 90 working days. Having said this, the victim is free to file an FIR and go the route of the law, the actual law, not just the ICC, at any time. At any time in this process, should she feel that the case is so severe that she also wants legal justice. Apart from the ICC, she also wants legal justice. She can at any time file an FIR. And the employer is obligated to help her if she seeks support. Let's move on, Nandita. Covered this. So, what are the obligations of an employer? And these are mandated by the law. The POSH Act says that as per the POSH Act, the employer has to draft a POSH policy. As part of an HR policy manual, every company has to have a POSH policy. Now, the Act only covers women, but nothing stops companies from making a POSH policy which is gender neutral. So we actually recommend that you make a policy which is gender neutral, which covers any kind of sexual harassment. Second, treat sexual harassment as misconduct under service rules, under your code of conduct, under your any service employment rules. Ensure that you mention it very clearly that it is a misconduct against which action will be taken. Ensure that it is mentioned in your employment contracts. Ensure that if you have more than 10 employees in any branch and corporate office, you have ICCs. The government is now becoming extremely careful because after the recent Me Too movement, there are getting, a lot of audits that are happening, and there are financial penalizations. But more than financial penalizations, if it is found that a company is not compliant to the POSH Act, companies can lose their business license as well. The second obligation of the employer is to drive awareness sessions. So there are two kinds of awareness sessions that the POSH Act demands. The first awareness session is to make employees aware of what is sexual harassment, how to make a complaint, what are the rights of both the victims and the respondents. So that is about 2.5 hour training session, which they say once a year, all employees should go through. That's number one. The second training which the POSH Act says is that ICC members should be trained every year on how to conduct an investigation, what is sexual harassment, what is reconciliation, what is confidentiality, and so on and so forth. The third thing which they say is that the POSH Act should, or the POSH policy should be made available to all employees. And the last is compliance. So many times we find that ICC struggles. There is a case, they are trying to investigate, but they don't have time to investigate because their day-to-day job, they are so busy that they don't find the time to conduct an investigation. So the organization or the employer has to give them time off. If they are conducting an investigation, then those few days they have to be given time off from their day-to-day jobs so that they can conduct a bias-free investigation. They have to make an annual report. They have to ensure that all the submissions, the quarterly submission, the annual submission happens. They have to ensure that their employees can initiate legal action if they want to. So all of these are obligations of the employer. And if it is found at the time of audit that any employer is not compliant, then the first time there is a financial fine. But the second time around, if it is found that the employer is not compliant, then there is a cancellation of the business license. Let's move on. So finally, coming to the end of today's session, we would just say that Silence does not mean that the act is welcome. I think it is very important to understand that it is end of the day impact versus intent. It should not suffice to say that mera intent nahi tha. We should always be sensitive to what is it that the victim or the recipient of the act is feeling. A no means no. If we have asked, or if someone has asked somebody for and it is very common these days, there are a lot of youngsters who are working, young millennials, zillennials, and they must be asking each other out, but a no means no. It does Sexual harassment does not require actual physical contact. Even jokes, comments showing pornography is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment need not be repetitive. Even one time incident is an offense. We should also remember that everything is not sexual harassment. A general courtesy, like opening the door of the car or opening the door of a room, being polite, is not sexual harassment. Asking a person to perform, giving hard feedback is not sexual harassment. A grievance concerning pay, using or saying that I cannot give hard feedback to a female employee and fearing that, false sexual harassment complaints. Don't be afraid of false sexual harassment complaints, because if there is a false sexual harassment complaints and it is proven that it is a false sexual harassment complaint, then the punishment for false sexual harassment complaint are just as harsh as the sexual harassment complaint under the act. Invitation to go out, and if somebody asks somebody to go out for dinner, and if the person says yes, then there is nothing wrong in it. Relationships which are consensual, people are going out on mutual consent, is not sexual harassment. Let's move on. So sexual harassment is anything which is unwelcome, which has sexual undertone, and is a subjective in experience, because it depends on how the other person is feeling, how the lady is feeling. It is the impact on the lady and not the intent that matters. So that's it from us. Let's all say no to sexual harassment. Open to any questions now, Sandeep. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sonika. It's been a really awakening session. So as in our organization, we have the POSH policy, but there are so many things which I have come to know today, which so it is on the paper though. We have read the policies, but definitely today has been a little different thought process which is going in my mind right now. So let's take few questions which are there on the panel. So Ajit is asking one question which says that with work from home and virtual meetings, what are the impacts and changes, assuming the law was done with most of us working at office?
Yeah. So Ajit, with work from home and virtual meetings, what one needs to keep in mind is that even virtual harassment is harassment. So we are not just bound by, as we said, that sexual harassment is not just physical. So everything that, harassment, quid pro quo, can still happen virtually.
Yeah.
Hostile work environment can happen even in virtual meetings. What is now even difficult to capture is that in a physical work environment, if a woman was being uncomfortable, one could figure out by her body language. She had a recourse to go and speak up. Now, in the comfort of her home, when she is, if she is being forced to reconcile or keep quiet, you possibly do not know that. So the number of, and also in the current scenario where the job insecurity is very high, a person might not come up and complain. So creating that security, saying that even in this situation, we are still gung ho and we are still saying no to sexual harassment. So I would say that right now, showing your commitment to POSH and saying that even in this scenario, sexual harassment is a big no-no, whether it is virtual or work from home. Quid pro quo and hostile work environment is not welcome in our organization. And women are free to reach out to ICC if there is any instance where they feel uncomfortable. So a communication of that sort may be a refresher with what can virtual sexual harassment mean.
Right. So towards the end of your slide, there was a question, there was a note which says the silence does not mean that the act is welcome. So I didn't get that point. This is a question from me.
Okay. So sometimes, as I said, that women do not speak up. So I'll give you an example, Sandeep. So I was expecting my child, and I had a big baby bump. And there used to be this very senior gentleman who had this habit of patting my baby bump. And I used to feel very uncomfortable about it. So all of us have our personal spaces.
Right.
And different people have different personal spaces. Right? किसी की ज़्यादा होती है, किसी की कम होती है. Now somebody patting my baby bump was not comfortable to me and I didn't say it for the longest time. Then one day my colleague was with me when he did it. And she said, why do you allow it? I said, मैं क्या बोलूं उनको? She said, मना कर. So next time when he approached to do it, I stepped back. And I said, boss, मत करो यार.
Right. Yeah. Got it.
Right? So that is what I meant to say, that even a feeble no is a no. So get the message.
Right. Yes, that's right. That's right. And what is about this legal compliance, which you said that one is quarterly, another is about the annual, which goes to the DM. So how strict is this legal compliance, whether it is mandatory or, because as you said that any organization which I have more than 10 employees, they need to do this with the POSH Act. So I'm not sure about that. How strongly this has been followed in our country at the moment?
So I remember about 6 months back in Bombay, there were a lot of companies which were slapped with fines.
Okay.
Now it depends कि कहाँ पे district magistrate जागरूक हो जाता है. आपको हमारी country का पता है.
Okay.
है ना? So, but better safe than sorry. See, the first time it happens, the fine is very little. It's just 50,000 rupees. But the second offense, the cancellation of the business license, is scary. Now, the compliance is not too much, which is having a POSH policy, having an ICC, doing training sessions, making sure everybody is aware. It doesn't take too much. So having and doing that annual report, it takes one round of effort, and ensuring that everybody is aware and everybody, it doesn't take too much.
Right.
Ensuring that you are compliant in letter and spirit.
Yeah. So we have another question on the board. It says that if any institution has less than 10 employees in the branch, one ICC is sufficient in the head office. So I think the question is, if they have multiple branches, so only one policy is it sufficient?
Yeah. So typically what these organizations should do is they should have by branch ICCs, so they can have one member from that branch, and that branch can borrow. So for sorry, if the ICCU has in the branch, yes.
Yeah.
So the branch that has less than 10 employees does not require an ICC, first of all.
Yeah. Okay.
But the branch which has more than 10 employees will require an ICC. Okay.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
head office ICC can suffice. Now, typically, what a lot of organizations do is that there is one ICC in the HO, then there are a lot of branches. Now, some branches will have, let's say, 15 employees, some will have 7 employees, some will have 9 employees, and like that. Now, the branch which has 15 employees, what it will do is it will have an ICC, and what they will do is that ICC will have, let's say, 2 members from that branch, and they will borrow 2 members from the HO branch, from the HO ICC.
Okay.
Okay. Now, how does that help? That helps because that ICC now has 2 members from the branch, so they have perspective of the branch. Plus, they have 2 experienced members from the HO ICC who are trained and they have good experience of the POSH Act and who have worked with the presiding officer, or they also take the presiding officer or the external member. So they kill 2 birds with the same stone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So can an internal committee be made from combined of all the branches, not specifically only from the HO, but it can be made from the combined branches also? One ICC committee.
Don't make combined, borrow. Okay. So have at least one member of the branch for perspective.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions we have at the moment. So Amit, if you have any question.
No, I don't have any questions. So it was glad to hear the questions from you and the other members. I've been getting my sessions from for POSH from quite a long time from Sonika. So as of now, not much of a questions.
So thank you so much, Sonika. Actually, it has been really, your presentation has been eye opener. I believe it has been for all our viewers today, and also who will be watching later when this video will be available on the tube. And I think they can get enlightened. And I think this is a very important policy which has to be enacted in letter and spirit, as you said. So thank you once again for taking your time out and giving us all this opportunity to see your presentation. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the viewers who could join today. But definitely you can see this video, which will be available on the RATA website also, and on the YouTube channel also. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Sonika and Sandeep. It was a nice session, and we look forward to many more such sessions in the future. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.